Ladies and gentlemen, straight answers from a politician. Pierre Poilievre came out swinging today when he delivered an address from Iqaluit. We got a sense of the rebranded message from the Conservatives that was centered around Canada first and Carney last. Let's take a look.
This is a wake-up call. We need to become self-reliant and protect our interests and our sovereignty. That's why I'm announcing today part of my Canada First plan to take back control of the Canadian Arctic. One, we will double the size of the first patrol group of the Canadian Rangers from 2,000 to 4,000 Rangers. The Canadian Rangers provide self-sufficient mobile forces to support the military. They often report suspicious and unusual activities while providing local knowledge and expertise to the broader Canadian forces. Two, we will acquire 2 additional polar icebreakers for the Royal Canadian Navy. These icebreakers will be on top of the current icebreakers that Seaspan and Davie shipyards are already building for the Coast Guard. The Liberals have promised these 2 heavy icebreakers, but not said when they will deliver them. I will deliver the Coast Guard icebreakers by 2029. And they will be on top of the 2 new Navy icebreakers that I just mentioned. So to sum up, under our common sense conservative plan, Canada will get 2 new heavy icebreakers for the Coast Guard and 2 new heavy icebreakers for the Canadian Navy. 3, the Canada First plan of the Conservative government will build Canada's first permanent Arctic military base since the Cold War. It will be CFB Iqaluit, right here in this community. We will build it in consultation with military experts, local government leaders, and the Indigenous population. Iqaluit already has a forward operating location and a functional airport and seaport that can accommodate the Canadian forces. Iqaluit already has between 7,000 and 9,000 people, so the base would not be isolated and would bring increased quality of life and economic development to this important city. The base will host the Royal Canadian Air Force Wing. It will launch F-35s as fighter jets. It will also provide a place to launch and land Poseidon P-8s that will deter threats and carry out search and rescue, anti-submarine warfare, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance work. The Royal Canadian Navy and Coast Guard could also continue to use Iqaluit's seaport as a base of operations to conduct maritime surveillance and icebreaking in Canada's Northwest Passage and beyond.
Okay, so this is one of the interesting things about the Conservatives, new plan. I wouldn't even say new plan. I would say their new message. One of the things that we have heard loud and clear over the last couple of interviews that we have conducted, especially with Colonel Redman and former CSIS Asia Pacific Chief Michelle Juno Katsuya, is that we really need a new focus on national security in Canada. And this is what it's nice to see from Pierre. Because if you listen to Carney and if you listen to Karina Gold and even Freeland, they just say, well, I'm going to increase our NATO spending, to the 2%, and I'm going to get it done by 2027, 2029, 2030. But they don't say how. And what we heard from Colonel Redman, and it's a great interview if you haven't seen it, is that a lot of ways these politicians just say that they're going to reach this cap is they'll say, well, we'll buy some really expensive toys, and that's about it. But they don't necessarily fix the problem of what the military needs. Now, one of the things that has been highlighted by NATO, and it's not just the US, is that we need a more significant presence in the Arctic. And this plan of opening a new permanent base in Iqaluit is actually really smart, because you're putting it in the Arctic region. You're leveraging the town that's already, or sorry, the city that's nearby, because Iqaluit is the capital of Nunavut, and that's going to serve to boost the economy in the north for one of the largest cities up there. You don't have to spend money on building an airport, a new seaport. You just spend money augmenting what's already there, which is a lot cheaper than if you were to just build one from scratch. So it's a really good first stepping stone to dramatically increasing our presence in the north. And being an Arctic nation, one thing that we need is icebreakers, 100%. So this makes sense that that's going to be one of the investments that we're putting in here. So this is a plan that's really starting to make sense as he brings it together. And again, these are specifics, and we haven't heard any specifics about any defense spending at all from Carney or the rest of them. But this is what you get when you have a government in waiting. This is what the Conservatives have had with their shadow cabinet, a government in waiting for the last 2 years. They're ready. They're ready to go, and it seems like they have these plans ready to execute at a moment's notice should they form government.
It would also help NORAD detect, deter, and if necessary, destroy any incoming threats. It will fuel local economic development, transportation, and infrastructure. All of these improvements will be funded by dramatically cutting foreign aid, most of which, or a lot of which, goes to dictators, terrorists, and global bureaucracies. We've got enough problems at home. We've got our own backyard to protect. We can't be sending billions of dollars to other places. Often much of it is wasted and stolen and swallowed up by bureaucracies that act against our interest. I will be bringing our money home with massive cuts to these wasteful and corrupt foreign aid grants.
And that is music to Canadians' ears as well. No more funding for Sex Work the Musical. I know, calm your disappointment. You may never get to see it now, but we have more important things to actually spend our money on, folks. And it's not musical about prostitutes. I'm sorry. This is the world that we live in. You know, maybe when we get prosperous again, you'll be able to, fund that musical again, and then you'll get a front row seat. But, for right now, this is where we're at. But music to Canadians' ears. And this is the thing, the Liberals just sit there and say, well, he's just going to cut all the critical programs. No, where he's going to start is cutting all of the garbage that the Liberal government has been spending their money on over the last 10 years. And a lot of it, sorry, Carney, at Carney's direction, because he has been providing financial advice for the last 5 years on and off, and significantly over the last 6 months. So, sorry, that's where we're at.
So Canadians will decide with Trudeau, Carney, Liberals, more and more billions of dollars will go to global and globalist organizations, while our people at home are starving and our military is unable to defend our territory. Or they can bring it home with common sense Conservatives who will make sure our money serves our people, our sovereignty, and our interests. And we will also go ahead with the already planned defense update, NORAD modernization plans that include, among other things, advanced air-to-air missiles, air-to-air refueling aircraft, upgrades at the forward operating locations in Inuvik, Yellowknife, Goose Bay, and of course the new base here in Iqaluit. Other upgrades include early warning aircraft, northern operational support hubs, new submarines to replace the failing Victoria-class fleet, tactical helicopters, and a new satellite ground station in the Arctic. Common sense Conservatives will deliver all of these things faster than the current Liberal plan by cutting red tape and delays. If we are to be a sovereign, self-reliant nation, we must take control of our north, secure all of our borders, and stand on our own 2 feet. We cannot count on the Americans to do it for us anymore. This is a reality. This is the wake-up call. And let me comment on President Trump's remarks yesterday.
So before we get to that, this is another smart move that Pierre is doing. Remember when he tied the NDP to the Liberals, the NDP Liberals? Now it's the Trudeau-Carney Liberals. So he's trying to tie, not that he has to try because they are tied together, but in his messaging he's tying Justin Trudeau to Mark Carney so that Canadians understand that you're going to be getting more of the same, but it's going to be much worse with Mark Carney. This is the issue. If you look at his books, he is just a more intelligent Justin Trudeau. He tries to dazzle people with his business speak. The the carbon border adjustment, aka the carbon tax tariff, that's essentially what it is. That is going to put tariffs on every single foreign country and their goods that are coming into Canada and tick them all off. And any exports that are going to their countries from Canada, they will most likely respond with a tariff in kind. This is a problem for Canadian businesses and the Canadian economy. But he's not concerned with the Canadian economy. He says, well, this is going to be better for Canadian businesses. It's going to provide them, less competition and allow them to thrive. No, it's not. And all you're doing is you're making Canadians pay more. So real smart in how the Conservatives are pivoting this and are talking about national security, securing our borders. And I'm also glad he addressed the fact that we can't count on the Americans to secure our own country for us. That's frankly embarrassing. And if I'm the American military, I don't blame them for being annoyed with Canada, because we have significantly downgraded our military since World War II and Korea. Significantly. To the point where they're looking at us as, they're almost looking at us like squatters. Like, hey, we're investing all the money in our military and you're not even helping at all. Now, I don't blame our armed forces, I blame the governments, because it's the governments that decide the size of our armed forces. So it's time we restore pride in our armed forces, we restore the number of our armed forces, and make it an organization that is back to being world class, and an organization that people are legitimately proud to serve in because of the equipment, because of the support they get, and because of the direction of the country. So it's a breath of fresh air, finally, from a government that seems like it has a comprehensive plan to augment our armed forces.
Let me be clear. Canada will never be the 51st state. We are a proud, sovereign, and independent country. We are a patriotic people, and we will defend our future and our independence. Second, he has threatened to bring in tariffs on our steel and aluminum. We will retaliate in kind with matching tariffs on American aluminum and steel, all of the proceeds of which will be given back to our steel and aluminum industry, and any surplus will be given in tax relief for our people. But these tariff threats are a wake-up call. The Carney-Trudeau Liberals have destroyed our economy over the last 9 years. Let's think about this for a second. The Carney-Trudeau Liberal policies that doubled housing costs, doubled food bank lineups, doubled our national debt, and sent $500 billion out of our country to the United States were wrong before. They are absolutely dangerous now. The combination of Trump tariffs and Carney-Trudeau tax hikes would be an existential disaster for the Canadian economy. Mark Carney has been in charge of our economy for the last 5 years when he became Justin Trudeau's advisor. And what has been the result? Doubling the debt, printing $700 billion of inflationary cash, destroying the purchasing power of our money, shutting down pipelines that would have made us less reliant on the Americans so that they get all our oil and all our gas, a radical environmental agenda that sought to deliberately defund Canada's energy sector. That has been Mark Carney's radical agenda that Justin Trudeau has been implementing dutifully over the last 5 years. This agenda was wrong before. It is an existential threat to every Canadian's job now. And that is why we need to go in exactly the opposite direction.
Very interesting how the Liberals love using this term existential threat. You know, Donald Trump is an existential threat. Pierre Poilievre is an existential threat. So Pierre's like, oh yeah? Well, your policies are an existential threat. And that's a lot more easier to actually digest and see than just ascribing it to a person. Because this is the thing. Remember, coming back to Mark Carney's carbon border adjustment, aka the carbon tax tariff, what that is, it's actually worse than the carbon tax. Because remember, the Liberals kept going on and on and on and on for months and months and months, telling you that don't worry about the carbon tax. Every dollar that you may or that you spend is going to be returned to you, and then some, and blah, 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 regardless whether it's true or not. We know it's not true. The carbon tax tariff, Carney says, well, we're going to tax all this stuff, and Canadians are going to have to pay for it. And he says, but it'll get returned to you if you buy anything green. Well, here's the problem with that. So you're going to pay all this money on all these goods, and you're not going to have money to actually purchase anything green. So how are you supposed to get this money back, Mark Carney? Oh, right. You're not. You're not. So all it is just another cloak and dagger, smoke and mirrors tax on every Canadian citizen. Never mind the fact that he's going to be increasing the industrial carbon tax. And he's trying to say, oh, well, that's not going to trickle down to consumers. Oh, really, Mark? So these organizations are just going to be charitable? They don't care about profit? Well, you better tell their shareholders that they don't care about profit, because they probably have something to say about that.
We need to do away with Mr. Carney's carbon tax. This is another thing. Carney told CTV about 10 days ago he's going to bring in a new carbon tax on Canadian industry. He mentioned steel. Can you imagine what it would do to our country if at the same time Donald Trump hits our steel industry with a tariff, Mark Carney brings in a massive new carbon tax? My friends, under Mark Carney, there will be no steel making in Canada, and we will lose the most fundamental strategic building block of an economy and, frankly, our national security. These radical policies have not worked in the last 9 years, and they will be a catastrophe if they are allowed to continue for a fourth term of the Carney-Trudeau Liberals. That's why we need a strong, Canada-first, common-sense conservative government that will, yes, axe taxes, build homes, fix budgets, and stop crime, that will bring home production and paychecks by repealing anti-energy laws, that will build pipelines, unapologetically build pipelines, dig mines, LNG liquefaction plants, that will pass a bring-it-home tax cut to bring back the $500 billion that the Carney-Trudeau Liberals have given to the Americans. We will take back control of our borders with more border guards. We will cut foreign aid in order to rebuild our military, reclaim our north, put Canadians back in charge of their lives in the freest nation on earth. Canada first, Canada here, Canada now, Canada forever. Let's bring it home.
Powerful message. Focus on ourselves. And this is what Canadians, all of you, have been screaming for the last 10 years. What the heck are we doing spending all of this money on all of these other countries when we can't even take care of ourselves? And again, this goes back to something Pierre has said repeatedly. The government needs to be managing the government budget like we manage our budgets at home. If you can't afford to go on a vacation, then you don't go on the vacation. If you're barely making mortgage payments, if you can't afford food, the last thing you're going to do is say, oh, you know what, let's spend $5,000 and we're going to go to the Dominican Republic. Doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. Many of our viewers say, yeah, I haven't taken a vacation in 10 years. We get it. Our vacations, we work. So it is what it is. So this is what we're dealing with in Canada. So it's great that national security sounds like it's going to be a major pillar. That's good news. That's good news for all Canadians. But it can't just be the military. It has to trickle all the way down. And it seems like the other thing that Pierre is doing in his plan is signaling to Donald Trump, listen, we're ticking off the box of 2% or more of our GDP for NATO spending. We're ticking off the box of securing our border. And he's already been talking for months now, ticking off the box about addressing the drug crisis in Canada. Not the toxic drug crisis. All drugs are toxic. The drug crisis that's going on in Canada. So, very, very powerful message. He's come out swinging today. So, let's check out the questions.
So, for the CFB Iqaluit military base, you said that that's one of your plans. Can you say how much you think it might cost? How much you estimate you might be able to commit? When it might be built? And do you have confidence that, unlike the Nanisivik naval facility that was delayed multiple times over the years, this one won't be delayed due to harsh conditions and other things that delayed this one?
Thank you. That's a very good question. First of all, it will be part of our costed platform, and 100% of the cost of the base will come out of our foreign aid budget. In fact, today's announcement will actually reduce the deficit because I plan to cut foreign aid more than the full cost of the announcement that I've made today. This base will be up and running within 2 years of my becoming Prime Minister.
Ladies and gentlemen, straight answers from a politician. Amazing. Amazing. So, I'm going to fund it by foreign aid. It's not going to cost anything above that. It's going to be done in 2 years. No excuses. That's what's going to happen. Love it. Love it. And notice he said that's a very good question. People on the left, they rip on Pierre saying, oh, you know, he's always going after reporters. He only goes after reporters when they ask stupid narrative trap questions. That's the only reason he goes after reporters. When a reporter asks a good question, he acknowledges it. Absolutely. Great question.
Hi, Sam from CBC North here. What proportion of the jobs from all the announcements today will be held by the people of Nunavut?
As many as possible. As you know, the Canadian Rangers are a northern force that recruits northern peoples. We want as many of the Rangers as possible to be Inuit and Indigenous, because those traditions that have been passed down through the ages are absolutely essential to doing the job. The Rangers are the eyes and ears. They do things that modern technology has not yet mastered. And so we want as much as possible for the Ranger positions to be filled by Inuit and by the Indigenous peoples. Furthermore, we see a lot of opportunities for recruitment in the North for the Canadian military that will give jobs and skills to the youth in the region. I also have no doubt that young people who are starting to get into the trades here in Iqaluit are going to be extremely busy. So my message to the youth of Iqaluit and of the North in general, study the trades, get into the trades, because there's going to be a lot of trades work necessary to build this base. Do you have anything to add to that, James?
Yeah, I'll just say that when we start looking at expanding base infrastructure here, as well as upgrades to the North Warning System, the upgrades in the NORAD modernization program, as well as the forward operating locations throughout the North, That's all going to take a pile of local skills and local manpower to build this infrastructure. I'd also say that as we move forward, and if we need more and more energy, we're going to be looking at things like small nuclear reactors, and those modular reactors will not just power bases, but will power communities. And so where we can co-locate, like we're going to do here at CFB Iqaluit, there's going to be shared infrastructure for both the community as well as the base that is going to actually improve the quality of life for everyone.
I love these plans. They make sense. Like, and you know, I'm not just saying this because they're conservative. Like, it's brilliant because it makes sense, and the most brilliant solutions are often the simplest ones, right? So Pierre's plans are addressing so many needs. So one of the issues with the northern communities is that a lot of the youth have nothing to do. Like, one of the traditions, because one of my brothers actually used to live up in Baffin Island, is the kids are pulled out of school when they have to go and hunt with the family to actually go and get all of the meat for the winter. And the issue is aside from that and aside from school, there's not really much to do because of the isolation of the communities. And there's not a lot of opportunity for the youth too. So what are they supposed to do? Where are they supposed to go? So putting a whole bunch of investment in the north is actually solving a lot of those problems. And it's uplifting the indigenous communities. And like Pierre said, not because they're indigenous, but because they're best suited for the job. They're the most qualified for the job. And the whole idea of expanding our military presence while augmenting one of Canada's largest cities in the north, like, it's a win-win. Absolutely win-win. So I love that every facet of this plan, it is extremely well thought out. As you begin to look deeper into it, and it solves a lot of these societal issues that they're actually having up there with depression and lack of opportunity and hopelessness, because I'm never going to get out of this town, like nothing comes here. Well, now there's going to be a significant military base in Iqaluit. So that's not just good news for Iqaluit, it's good news for some of the other outlying communities where you have to get to by plane, by bush plane. Really, really good plan here. It's and this is only part of it, as he said, but I'm super impressed. I really am.
Thank you very much for your question on food inflation. The Carney-Trudeau Liberals have caused the worst food inflation in 40 years. Since Carney became Trudeau's top economic advisor in 2020, we've had the worst food inflation. In fact, food prices have gone up 37% faster under Carney-Trudeau than they did in the United States during the same time. You can't blame COVID or Ukraine for that. You have to blame the Carney carbon tax. Carney now says he'll quickly pause the tax for the election before bringing back an even bigger tax after the election, which would cause starvation in many communities. I will axe all the carbon taxes. We will remove barriers to interprovincial trade so our farmers can more affordably deliver food to our northern peoples. We will, if necessary, boost funding for Nutrition North so we can get food stuffs here. And I will assure you that every penny that I collect in counter tariffs will be used to reduce other taxes so that Canadians can afford to eat, heat, and house themselves. Finally, hunting rifles. The Carney-Trudeau Liberals have said they want to ban hunting rifles. That would be a lethal decision in northern communities. It's hard for people in the south to understand this, but hunting is not a hobby in the north. It is actually a survival. There are many families for whom the majority of protein calories actually come from hunting and fishing. You ban hunting rifles, as the Trudeau-Carney Liberals have tried to do, you starve families. So I will reject the radical Trudeau-Carney policy of banning hunting rifles. Under common sense conservatives, people in the North, people everywhere in Canada can know with certainty you will keep your hunting rifles. We will lock down the borders against gun smugglers and gangsters. We will go after the real criminals, not the Indigenous hunters, the farmers, and the patriotic Canadians that we love so much. Thank you very much. Let's bring it home for Canada.
Okay, so that's an interesting last question on it, and he's right. Again, I don't own a gun. If I move to a more rural location, it's a possibility that I'll buy one just for protection from animals and things like that. Grew up in the country. You have to have one because you don't know what's going to happen. When I grew up, we heard howling wolves and we had bear tracks. We had all of that. You had to have a gun just in case. It's just a fact. And never mind the fact that all of the data that we have says that gun crime and violent crime has nothing to do with gun owners with registered weapons. Has nothing to do with it. If it did, I would support all of these gun bans. I think it would be hard to oppose the gun bans if the data supported that. But the data doesn't support that. And I don't know how the Liberals can even continue talking about this, because as they have banned more and more guns, gun crime and violent crime has not decreased. So if that was the problem, you would expect that to come down, wouldn't you? Absolutely you would. But it's not. So obviously, one does not have to do with the other. So give Canadians back their guns. We have lots and lots of good gun control, and it does its job. The data supports that. But this has been a very illuminating press conference. Feels a lot different than some of the recent ones, and I think this is Pierre and the Conservatives gearing up for this rebrand and this pivot. And I have a feeling that they are going to just come out blazing after next Saturday's rally. And I have a feeling we're going to see a media blitz, the likes of which we haven't seen before from the Conservatives. And they are just going to unleash the war chest, because they can spend to reckless abandon of their donation money that they've been collecting all of this time. Once they enter an election, there's a limit on how much all parties can spend in order to equalize the advantage here. But before the election, they can spend as much as they like on TV ads, radio ads, spots, you name it. So it's going to be very interesting to see what's coming. But I'm flabbergasted in a positive way at this Northern Defense Plan. There's so many integrated parts that solve so many legacy problems going back decades in terms of these Indigenous communities. And I think that's real good news for the Northern communities. And it's good news to our armed forces as well. So hats off to James Bazan and Pierre Poilievre and the rest of the team for putting together this plan. It sounds first rate, other than contrasting that to the Carney plan, which is, we'll spend a lot of money. I'm not going to tell you what it's on, though, but we'll spend a lot of money and you should trust me.